Hi, I'm Maria. I'm a Stampin' Up demonstrator in Ontario, Canada, and this is my second attempt at making this video for a Christmas card in July. The first video I made, for some reason, cut out in the middle just as I was about to explain what I was doing, and I apologize for that. So this is my retake of that video. So for Christmas in July, typically I do start making my Christmas cards in July. So this is the first card. And I pulled out a stamp set from the Annual Catalogue, Evergreen Elegance, which is on page 91 of the catalog, right here near the bottom. It comes with a border punch, which looks like this. Okay, and I have punched some trees out with that. I am not using that punch with this card. Just wanted to show it to you. So here is the simple card. It's very simple. It's one layer, no embellishments, no ribbon, no rhinestones, nothing. It's very easy to reproduce for Christmas. So if you have a lot of Christmas cards and you have to mail them overseas, etc., this is the type of card for you to make. The hardest part probably is making this rectangular area, and I want to spend a few minutes to show you how I made that. So we'll take this aside, and what I did, I took a scrap of cardstock, which in this case is Crumb Cake. It was in my scrap bin. It could be any color, and I took a stitched rectangle die. It could be any rectangle. It could be a circle even. And this is about 2 1/4 by 3 1/2. And I laid this on my scrap cardstock and ran it through my die cutting machine. And this is what I came out with. I trimmed it down so that it looks like this. Now, this is what will be on the front of my card, 3 3/4 by 5. And before I put the template down, I want to visualize where I want my art piece to be. So I lay it about here, and I'll take a pencil and lightly, there. And now I'll lay this down so that it is positioned just around the pencil marks, and tape it down. Did you see that? Okay, it's just, here's the pencil marks. Now, before I start sponging, I am going to erase those pencil marks, as my biggest fear is that if I start sponging and applying ink, that I won't be able to get those pencil marks off. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is apply some color, darker around the edges, lighter in the center, using Crumb Cake ink and a blender brush. Now, if you don't have a blender brush, you can use a finger dauber, a sponge, or whatever you use for doing sponging. And one nice thing with these brushes is that you layer the color. You don't come, I suppose you can come, really ink it up and put a big blob of color down, but the idea of sponging is to add layers of color. It's very similar to watercolor, is that you layer your colors. And if you apply it in little circles like this, you get the best sponging effect rather than going like this. Now, there are times when you would want to apply color in that way, but when you're doing gradations of color like this, it's best to sponge in little circles and leave the middle part clear. Clearer, lighter, I suppose. I'm almost there. Now you could use Cherry Cobbler to do the sponging, or a green, or whatever color. Now here I think I started with a different color, but I ended up using Crumb Cake. So let's see if I like that. Oh, I do. Okay, I think that's good. So now to stamp the images, I'm going to bring out my Stamparatus. I don't need the washi tape, but I've left it there, so. Okay, make sure you can see that. Now I'll get I'm going to stamp the tree, and I'm taking the largest of the 3 trees. And before I stamp the tree, I'm going to stamp the ground that goes under the tree. A student of mine was a great believer and always told me, Maria, make sure you put something under the trees so that the trees don't look like they're suspended in air. So I've always listened to her. I think that makes a lot of sense. So I will put this down here, and I'll stamp it with Crumb Cake. And it may take about 3 stampings, but I think it's a good idea. Now, if you don't want to stamp, you can just use Stampin' Blends and draw some markings underneath the tree. And again, that's so that the tree doesn't look like it's suspended in air. And I think that's okay. Now the tree, I'm going to stamp with the new Evergreen Elegance stamp set. And I'll position this so that the bottom of the stamp is overlapping the grounding a little bit. Because it's a rubber stamp and there is a bit of an edge on the stamps that you have to take into consideration. See this edge? And so if you place it so that the tree is right there, you're going to have a little gap. So if we just take into consideration that little bit of rubber, make sure that's straight. And I'll do one more. I could have taken the tree down a little bit further, but now one thing I don't want to see you do is press that hard. I'd rather you stamped 2 or 3 times rather than, I think I'll do one more. There, that's good. Now I'll just clean that off and we'll do the sentiment. I'm going to do the sentiment in Cherry Cobbler. That's good. Now we'll just clean that off. I have a bit more stamping to do, but we'll stamp that the traditional way. before I add this to the card front, I want to do a bit more sponging. So if you look carefully, I've done sponging around the edges as well. So I'm going to bring back my blender brush and my Crumb Cake ink. Now we've had quite a bit of rain the last couple of days, and yesterday I was concerned that I was going to get flooded because we had quite a bit of rain in a short period of time, and it kind of reminded me of the flood in 2004. But we didn't get anything in the basement. Now I like to emphasize the corners, so it paid a little bit more attention to the corners. Now, I should have let that Cherry Cobbler dry a little bit, and you see how it smeared just a little bit. Now, we'll just add that to the card front. And then we'll get out my Tombow. Now for the inside, I'm going to stamp the traditional way. I'm going to stamp the sentiment in Cherry Cobbler. And then I just want to show you here what I've done on the inside. Now this got stamped a little crooked. We will try to do it a little bit straighter this time. And we'll stamp here and see. Okay, that looks good. Okay, that's pretty good. And now I have a little tree that I'm going to stamp with the green, Evening Evergreen. And now I'm going to sponge the edges with Crumb Cake, just like I did the front. And that coordinates the front with the back, with the inside. And when you're sponging, to come in from the outside, don't just go plunk in. That's when you get the sponge marks. And like I said, you don't have to do it the color very strong. You just want to sponge it a little bit. Some people like to hold on to it like this. Some like this. It doesn't really matter. Find whatever is comfortable for you and what works best for you. There are some days that I work like this, but today my fingers are sore, so I'll go more like this. And again, the corners. There. Now I'll add that to the inside. There's the two cards. Not bad, pretty close. Now I just want to show you a couple of other cards I made using this stamp set. So these are the two. And here's one that I made the rectangle down a little bit lower, and then therefore I put the Merry Christmas just across the line here. That looks okay. And there's another image on the stamp set. This one. You say, well, what do I do with that? Okay. Here's what I did. Again, I did the sponging around the outside, and I used the sentiment on the inside, and then stamped the two images upside down above that. And I thought, wouldn't that be lovely embossed? So I embossed that on Cherry Cobbler. And then I did all sponging with different colors of blue, and then stamped the trees in Night of Navy in first, second, and third generation stamping. So those are some suggestions for cards made with the Evergreen Elegance stamp set in the Annual Catalogue for the Christmas in July. Thank you so much for watching.